I'm not going to give you the every day was a wonderful gift from God speech. I have had a lot of bad days. I've had bad days with you, too. But I've had more good days with you than with anyone else. Just give me one more good day.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Sci'D Geeks. You got me, James, and my boy Rudy right across from me. What are we doing today, Rudy? We're going to be breaking down The Last of Us Episode 3, titled Long, Long Time. And at first, I'm like, all right, I don't get the significance of it. But then it slowly trickles in, you know? It kind of like interacts with what was popular at one point, and there's a little quick flashback to Episode 1. With the long, long time coming from the Linda Ronstadt song. What was your take on some of these things that you saw today? What are you excited about?
Dude, we'll definitely get into it, but by far, and I was telling you just a little bit ago before the podcast started, by far my favorite episode. It hit weird today. It hit deep.
Yes.
Very good episode. Completely different story from the game, but I freaking loved it, man. They made it work. So yeah, I can't wait to get started.
You're right. I think you're right. It's different, but it was a different that enriched the game.
Yeah, I agree.
Like it literally. My first take on it before we get into it was I was like, okay, if they're gonna switch it, that usually means it's gonna be bad. But it was I think this is like the first time I've ever seen, let's say, a video adaptation or a book to movie adaptation where they tweaked it and it was better than the original story.
Yeah,
and it just added so much to the story of Last of Us, not just the story of certain people, just in general, because. I mean, we're going to get into it, but it just goes into a deeper dive about what's going to make you survive in this world that they're in, and what's going to make you become a loner. And it doesn't mean you're alone by yourself. Just like in your mind, you'll be alone.
Yeah, man. And one thing that I appreciate so much is that the showrunners are being really meticulous with the things that they put out there. To obviously they want to succeed with this show and they're doing a great job, but I thank them for removing some stuff, adding some stuff, changing things, keeping some things the same, and it's just working out so well. From episode 1 and 2, like seeing a clicker, we don't see one in all this show, and you think, right, this show is about that, but it's not, right? It's about these individual stories, and man, that break your heart almost guaranteed at the end of the show or at some point during the show, right? But yeah, we can get into it. But
I think before we do,
dude,
like my biggest thing is like, okay, so with anything involving a video game, there's a lot of shit you can't put it into a story. Like how we are going around gathering supplies in the game, or how we're finding weapons in the game, or little tokens in the game. None of that is important when you're depicting this in a real story, like in a movie or a series like this.
Correct.
So the fact that they added this huge backstory to two characters that we only kind of like glanced over when the game was involved goes to show you that with the right writing and the right people to back, I guess, the story, the people behind the video game and the people behind the series, you need to communicate and produce an amazing story like this.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, I think it's time to dive in.
Yeah, so I think to get us started, I can tell you that it threw me back because I thought that we're gonna keep this theme of starting with a flashback, but not this time. They started with current times in 2023 with Joel and Ellie, and then for a little bit, right, to set up the story, and then we get this huge flashback and that kind of grows into 2023 in present times, right? So, so yeah, let's start from the top. 2023, 10 miles from Boston, right? So we got Ellie and Joel. And so tell me about this first scene. It's right away they throw in the stream, right? And Joel putting his hand in the cold water. Like, what do you take from that?
The biggest thing I took from it is him stacking the rocks. Like the depiction of him by the river, I think that's straight from the video game, if I remember correctly. I know they were in the woods in the video game as well, but we never saw him stack the rocks. And I think that's just his way, or that's his symbolization of, I guess, putting Tess to rest. It was like, like in a lot of cultures, stacking rocks is a way of burying someone. Because you couldn't do it at the time, and there's just, the circumstances didn't allow it, with them being chased and then the explosion. He finally took 2 seconds out of his day to pay her some respect by stacking those rocks. And I thought that was a nice little touching moment right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that's a good point. Kind of like that morning, right? Of Tess. And, I was looking into a little bit like what because I thought, it's an art, right, that people have done about this rock stacking, and I wanted to kind of mention that a little bit. And there's a couple different things, right? So they call it rock stacking or stone stacking or cairn, as I guess the proper word, and I guess it's always been used from like ancient times to like kind of mark landmarks and things like that. But what I kind of took from it is patience, right? Because it takes patience to kind of stack these things. And besides what you said, which is a really good point about him mourning Tess's death, I think that it also shows a little bit of him gaining a little patience, with the new individual he's with, because Ellie sometimes can be a handful, and we see it more and more this episode. Like, her mouth can't stay quiet, right? And for the things that she's gone through,
she's got diarrhea of the mouth, man.
Oh my God, so I thought about that too. Like, oh man, like that definitely represents like him, and patience, or maybe trying to control it, right? Trying to gain that emotional intelligence. But yeah,
another way I can look at it is, we still don't know Joel. We don't know how his mind works, what craziness that's going on between those two ears of his. We don't know what he's going through. So maybe alongside of maybe a side of respect for Tess, maybe this is just him, when he's stressed out, he's got to do something simple to distract his mind. Just a simple gesture. Like, I know for me, when I stress out, I'm doodling. Like, I'm listening to you, but like, if I have to distract my mind a little bit, I'm drawing something, I'm writing something, just to shut my head off. Like, it could be something like that as well.
Yeah, I podcast. No, but all kidding aside, yeah, that's you hit it right in the nail. Like, we don't know him, and it's part of the character development, right? That we're seeing this guy. I mean, we think we know him, and because we play the game and so on. But with the show, we never know what that what turn is that gonna take. But then we kind of see Ellie, right? And observation there. When we see the first shot of her, she is being covered by Joel's jacket, right? Which means to that point that maybe he is starting to open, because at the end of the last episode, he just walked away, right? So whatever,
he didn't want to touch her.
He didn't want nothing to do with it. And still, in this particular episode, I think Ellie tried to reach out and just kind of say, "Hey, about Tess," right? And then he snaps. He's like, don't speak about her.
We're not going there.
But she does tell him, "Hey, I wasn't. All I wanted to say is, like that was not my fault. Like, you guys wanted a car battery or something she wants, right? Like, or something she said.
Yeah, this is your choice.
Right, you guys were after that, and I just happened to come along with the right, and then, like, it's not my fault, right? So Which is interesting because it makes me think like, hey, like did she want to say sorry or at least sorry for your loss or whatever? But it kind of didn't turn out that way.
Yeah, I think she was probably going through a little guilt in her own little heart, and it's to a point where some people, when they feel guilty, take a defense mechanism behind it. Like, hey, I just want to let you know, this is you guys chose this life. You didn't have to take this. You didn't have to take me anywhere. They would have found me someone to take me. So you chose to pick this. You wanted that battery so bad to do God knows what you wanted to do with. And you know what's nice about that scene? Because she talks about, just like in the game, she's never been in the woods. And then you see them getting on a trail to a gas station, which was such a nostalgic scene for me, because I would ransack those places in the game. I'd be going to every little inn trying to find every little thing, every little nook and cranny I could store. Were there any bullets in here? Were there any rations in here? I'm just trying to grab any secrets as well. So I loved seeing the outshot of the gas station.
Yeah, and big shout out because I was watching a comparison video, and they even got it like very similar. Oh, and actually, it looks like it's a real store. Like it's actually like a real chain or whatever. I had no idea, and I forgot the name of it though. But exactly right. So they go into this gas station store, right? And that's because Joel said that he had something stashed, but we see that Ellie, a 14-year-old, right, and like any 14-year-old looking for danger, finds this crawl space, right, and goes down. And to your point, I thought it was awesome that what she finds was a box of tampons. Because that's what they do in the game, right? Like they find supplies, right? And then you take your supplies. And I just thought that was like perfect because in the apocalypse, 14-year-old girl, like this is probably something that she will need. But then she is faced with a nice surprise in
the best part about it, I mean, also Joel starts making dad jokes before she uncovers anything. Like, it's the same joke he said in episode 2. Like, is this place dangerous? Or no, is there anything dangerous in here?
Oh
yeah, you. And so he said the same joke twice, like your typical dad joke. As she's going to look through, she finds that little bunker, and she goes in it, and that's where she finds the tampons and a little. I guess looking at the infected, they're either runners, stalkers, clickers, and I forget what the last ones are called. Probably bloaters.
I think that's exactly what they're called.
And so I think the person that she finds buried under all that rubble is a stalker, because I don't think he's in that stage where he's running. Because from remembering how the guy that killed Tess, he didn't have too many coral or certain marks on his face. He just had the dead look in his eyes and the infection. So this person that she finds looks like he's a stalker.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it was an interesting, very odd, almost
crazy.
Crazy, macabre. How do you call it? Like she cuts him in the forehead, and it kind of reminded me of when the doctor cuts the ankle of the lady, and it's like all fungi inside, and it's the same thing, but it's almost like it almost made it seem like she's not doing it in the name of science. She's doing it in the name of shit. Like, let me see what this looks like, right? Because she kills him right away, but she kind of contemplates that for a little bit, right?
I think for her, it was like her way of getting over some fears. Like, you could see in initial reaction, she kind of wanted to bolt. She kind of wanted to run the other way. She took the time. She saw that he was buried. As she got close to him, I think the reason for the cut is to test her nerve. Like, how can she handle this world? As she cuts him, in her head, I'm thinking, this is my take. As she cuts him, she's like, "Oh, that wasn't shit. That's nothing. That was easy." Mm-hmm. And then you could see her trying to muster up the anger to get over her fear and finally strike him and kill him straight in the head. And I think after that, I think with Ellie, there's a lot of triggers. She was triggered by Joel's beatdown of the guard. Now she just triggered her own self by killing her first. This is her first kill probably ever.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that they talk about that, right? Like while they're walking, and I can't remember if this was before or after, but there is mention of, hey, like how many infected have you killed? And he's like, a lot, right? And it's probably because she hasn't experienced that, and boy, did she find the right dude to kill right in that crawl space. But yeah,
it was her way of popping her killing cherry, I guess. That's the best way I could describe it.
You know, and one of the cool things about, and I think it happened just right before that scene, the Mortal Kombat arcade machine. Yeah. It's like, dude, now let me ask you, like what do you think of that? So, and I only ask because it's 2003, right? And that's Mortal Kombat 2. That game was like more like 1993.
I think that game did come out in like early 2000s. I think it's before 2003, but because they're in I'm gonna give them some leeway.
Okay.
Because they're not in a major city. They're in a suburb of a city, and you know, just by the look of the gas station, even if it was brand new 2003 and working condition gas station, it looks like they would have old games in there, like a pinball machine, maybe the old quarter gumballs and crazy balls when you slam on the ground. So I'm gonna give them some leeway with that.
Okay.
But you're right. The Mortal Kombat 2 did come out because I think Mortal Kombat 1 was 1990 something, 95, I think.
Yeah, no, I think it was. I was playing Mortal Kombat 2 on the Sega Genesis, man. So you know what? Let's do a quick Google Mortal Kombat because now I need to know 2. And one. Oh yeah, it's a 1993 arcade fighting game. Man, I thought it was soon before that. But yeah, 1993. That's interesting. But man, and that is part of the game actually, right? However, in the game, they have like a fictitious in-universe fighting game, I think it is, and like the dynamic was similar.
But the callback is different. So the callback, there's a poster in, I believe, Sarah's room, or maybe one of Ellie's places. There's a Mortal Kombat 2 poster on the wall.
Oh, okay.
And that's where the callback comes from.
Gotcha.
Like, you're right. In the video game, there isn't a Mortal Kombat video game. There's literally a poster of Mortal Kombat 2 on either Sarah's or Ellie's wall in a flashback scene of some sort. I just can't remember where.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, and I think that scene was so important because it makes you think of the apocalypse, right? Like, you know Mortal Kombat, I know Mortal Kombat, you know, or whatever. But imagine never played it before, right? And you just know about it by word of mouth. Because she's like, oh my God, there's this character named Melina, and she describes the fatality, right? And it's like if you put yourself in her shoes, she's getting all excited for something that she has ever played. Like, it's just all imagination, right? Because she hasn't seen anything. So I just thought that was pretty awesome, and an awesome reference to another great video game.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like the whole scene prior to getting our first flashback. It was really the part of the whole episode that was very video game accurate. Because right after that, you see them on the walk where they try to have Ellie's just trying to get some sort of insight into Joel's heart or brain, or just to be able to like each other. Yeah. And he's, being his stoic self. She even asked him about a scar and how he got the scar. He goes, well, it was a shoot off. Someone tried to shoot me and he missed. He goes, and then she's like, oh, well, that's cool. You were in a shootout. That's cool. Like being like a little kid. And then as you're getting, what I noticed is I loved how they transitioned into the flashback. They were walking down the road. Joel is trying to tell her, we're not going down this way. We'll take the long way. This way, there's just some shit you shouldn't see. She's like, I've seen clickers. I've seen everything. I've seen people die. What's the big deal? And he's tried to warn her that she just wouldn't listen, so they went down that road, and that's when they run into the mass burial ground where they just killed innocent people. You know?
Yeah, that was pretty crazy, and I also have a note about that of what a great and perfect transition into or into the past, right? Back in 2003, because they show us how that happened. But just before we start there, I just wanted to ask you about the scar, because you mentioned it, right? Do you think, and he says something like, oh, they shot at me, he grazed me, and I shot back. Originally I thought, could this have been, when Sarah died, right? And I know he didn't really shoot back, although he doesn't necessarily have to tell Ellie the truth. But do you think it might represent or kind of a scar that every time he looks in the mirror, he thinks of Sarah, and maybe that's why he's so fucking in pain all the time? I mean, do you think that there's a deeper meaning behind that scar?
I think you're defining more the watch than the scar. I think the watch is the reminder constantly. Like, you could see that it's got 2 holes in the watch, in the glass. It's broken. It's not going to work. Nothing can fix it. Nobody can fix it, but he'll wear it no matter what. And I think that's the symbolism that reminds him that I'm not going to get close to people because of this watch and what it represents.
Gotcha.
I think the scar, because I don't think the scar came from the shootout with Sarah dying, because Sarah got shot in the abdomen. He's holding her in his arms. Her head is pretty much covering the area of his head where his scar is, because they fall this way, and she gets shot in the stomach. Kind of takes the blunt of all the bullets.
Yeah. And so I remember him, like grabbing his side, right? Because I think he grazed him on the side. But, it's just something that I thought only because it's there. The scar is there. So why is it there, right? Or are in the, in a different episode 4 or 5 or whatever, are we going to get a flashback on when he gets the scar, right? It's possible. But then I was thinking, okay, did we see that already? But you bring a really good point, because I guess they wouldn't have 2 different reminders of Sarah, right? But just the watch. So I think you're definitely right.
I think the whole series is for this first year, and I hope it's only for this 1 year. Every episode's getting a flashback, just to enrich the story. And the way they've done it for the first 3, I'm game for all of them, because it's helping us discover stuff we never knew.
Yeah.
Like going on to this flashback, one thing that I want to say, whoever is like a big belief against the government and big pharma and those conspiracy theories, this show is paying dividend for them. because literally we come up to this gravesite, we see skeletons everywhere, we see a little bit of a dress flapping in the wind. It's a green dress. Literally from that green dress, we flash forward to the person wearing that green dress 20 years prior, and I'm gonna let you add to whatever you want to add to
it was not only the green dress, but you see like this baby skeleton, right? And you're like, oh shit. And I think he had like a little yellow pattern or whatever. And then we do the flashback, and you said it's a lady holding the baby, and you're like, what the fuck? And they explain, right, that or Joel is explaining to Ellie that they were just grabbing people and murdering them, man. Which
Well, I think let me rephrase that. I think they were grabbing people to put them somewhere, but everywhere they tried to put them, it was filled. They had no capacity left. And I think they're like, well, like when Ellie asked them, why did they kill these people? Well, the dead can't get infected.
Right. And that's what kind of got me, man, because, okay, the dead can get infected. So, well, I guess that
he said the dead can't get infected depending on where they're shot.
Right. So I didn't think about that point of view, but that makes sense. What you're saying. I was just thinking, the the less people, or maybe they couldn't get him into QZ or whatever. But I just thought it was brutal. As he explained, right, that we see all these people jumping in the truck, right, and it's almost, it's crazy because what's gonna happen to them, right, and where they ended up. But yeah, thanks for clarifying that, because at first I was thinking like, okay, why just kill them anyway, right?
Well, the reason why I brought that up is because, not to kind of jump where we're at right now in the storytelling. We get the flashback. You find out that Bill, played by Nick Offerman, is someone that's been building up for this for his whole life.
Yeah.
He's someone that's worried about the government. He's someone that would be made fun of for being a conspiracy theorist, but everything he had believed in comes to fruition. He sees, he pretty much calls out the government for being bastards, and you're not gonna trick me into following you just to get killed.
Right.
Now the reason why I'm jumping is because when we come to find Frank, he literally is trying to go to the QZ, not in Boston. Or he's trying to get to Boston from Atlanta, I believe.
I think he said Baltimore, I believe.
Baltimore.
Yeah.
So that goes to show you that a lot of QCs didn't have capacity. So, and mind you, that wasn't like 20 years ago. I think he met Frank 10 years ago, 10 years prior, or like right after.
He met him
20 years ago.
Yeah, he met him right after. Like it was I think months after. But yeah, very good point. And one thing I want to note is that when he's hiding in his basement, right, in his bunker or whatever you call it. That
is amazing hiding spot.
Oh,
that
dude.
Door is sick.
Oh, dude, that whole cabinet, lifting up or whatever, that was sick. But you're saying like he's the conspiracy theorist, super, Second Amendment, type dude. But it's funny because I saw a note from the showrunners where, and I don't know if when you're filming, right, a lot of the times directors are yelling lines to the actors as to how to act, like, hey, like act depressed, or think about this so that you can feel that think about your dead grandma or whatever so that you can feel emotion and things like that. And there's a line that he said something about, not today, your world order jackboot fucks, right? And the funny story there is that the directors just kind of had the line in the script just so that he can think it, right? And he can make that look. But then Nick Offerman was just like, no, you know what? I need to say this. And they're like, go ahead. And it just fucking worked, right? Like, worked perfectly for that scene because, he's not falling to the new world order, right? So.
Well, there you go. Like, prior to meeting Frank, you see Bill just go into this like ultimate. I mean, it most resembles, even though it's not part of the game, it most resembles the game because he's going around looking for supplies to create a fence, create bombs, just stash all his ammo as much as possible, steal chickens, have his own crops, get more seats. He literally goes to Home Depot, dude, and just goes on a crazy shopping spree. So I love that little scene because I was like, man, that's exactly what I would do. Dude, that's exactly what I would do.
That's so perfect, right? Because we all think about that, right? Like it's apocalypse time. Like we need to go to fucking Walmart or Home Depot, whatever, like get the guns and all that. And they gave us that whole montage was perfect. And in reference to a video game, right? All those side quests, right, that you want to do in order to, kind of like build your empire. But yeah, that was flawless, man, with how they show us Bill, because in the game he just shows up, right? Like we don't know Bill very well, right? And I'm glad that they kind of let us get to know Bill, even though we probably won't have him much longer. But anyway, so from there he does the montage, and then that's where actually I have it in my notes. So it's not the same time. It was 2007, so it was 4 years later.
Yeah,
and that he finds Frank in the hole.
Okay.
So let's talk about that a little bit, right?
So you have this guy, Frank, coming from the Baltimore QZ. He was with a group of people. He's the only survivor. How he survived, I don't know, because prior to meeting Bill, Frank doesn't really look like someone that knows how to survive on his own with no guns. He doesn't have any weapons on him. He doesn't have any supplies with him. No backpack, no nothing. So I don't really understand how he got to this point. So that's why in the beginning, when you first meet Frank, you're like, "What's going on?" I'd be looking around to see who you're with.
Yeah,
I was very skeptical of meeting Frank for the first time.
yeah, and one thing is that that I noticed is that when Bill is approaching the hole, he's walking normal. I don't think he knew that there was a human down there. Right. I think because if we see in a prior take, I believe he's eating dinner and then he sees an infected walking through the field and he's like, "Come on, motherfucker." Right. And he's like, "Yeah, perfect." And he keeps eating his steak or whatever he's eating. And it's funny because the whole scene he's walking and then all of a sudden Frank says something like hello, and then he's like, "Oh, shit." Right. Yeah. But very interesting dynamic there. And to your point, yeah, like what is Frank doing alone? Will we get another flashback showing us how Frank got there? I mean, I don't know. Do you think that's relevant to the story? Because it was iffy, man. It was iffy. Like you said, like this dude that, of course, they show us that he's kind of like the carer, the nurturer, right? How did he get there? Or did he know, right? That Bill was living there. But anyway, so
I mean, you could tell Frank's an educated person, Yes. So he's not stupid. He's not naive. He comes with, I'm assuming, a more white collar background than where when I look at Bill, he seems more blue collar to me. Yeah. So he's not an idiot. I mean, he knows his way around certain things probably. We just don't know any backstory of Frank.
Yeah, and I thought it was cool how right away he starts using his charm because he's a charming dude, and right away, right? And I think there was a moment too where like, he hesitates. He talks about, yeah, I'm not a good liar, and it seemed to me at that point I wasn't trusting him, right? I'm thinking this dude is still, I think I watched The Walking Dead too much, right? You can trust anybody.
Yeah.
But, and you're like a little skeptical, and then he goes out and then they have that whole interaction about like the food, and then you could tell that Bill is thinking about it, right? Like he's just, and you don't know why yet, and he's thinking about it, and then Frank kind of like throws a very subtle smile, and I think that's where he caught him, right? He's like, "Yeah, shit, like all right, like."
I didn't trust Frank till after the scene with the piano.
Yeah.
Like even during the piano, the scene with the piano where you see Bill start playing after Frank butchered the song. The Linda Ronstadt song.
Yeah.
Bill starts playing and he does a better job playing piano. I still didn't trust him. I'm like, this is where he gets like hit in the head with a hammer or something.
Right.
That's what I kept thinking because I'm like, they're changing the story so much. What if Frank's a dick? What if he's evil? And the whole time I'm like, something's bad's gonna happen. And then no, come to find out, these two slowly go into a relationship together and fall madly in love.
Yeah, I agree with you because up until that point, he feeds them and he's like complimenting his food, and then Frank starts noticing, right? Like he pours the wine, and I think Frank starts thinking, okay, like this guy may be gay, right? Like, and I don't know if he knew right away, right? But and I'm not just saying it because of the pour, but just because he knew, welcomed him, right?
Not only that, he knew the exact wine to pair with steak. Yeah. So he's like, well, you know very well what you're doing. So I think that's what raised Frank's interest that, here's a person that is attractive or mildly attractive that has same taste that I do. And in this world of chaos, okay, I'm starting to like this guy.
And not only that,
there's a piano over there too.
yeah, and there's a part where like I think Frank is like, I mean not Frank, but Bill is getting the food, and you see Frank just kind of like swiping his finger on the cabinet, and it's like all dusty, and you could just tell that, you know, and at that point I'm thinking like, oh man, like he's gonna take advantage of, you know, doing that part, right? Like he's gonna be like, hey, I can clean for you, and I can, you know, make the house look pretty or whatever. Obviously they didn't verbalize it, but I'm thinking that's how he's gonna grab him and murder him or something, because I was still skeptical, like you said, up until that point. Right. But that piano scene, man, oh my god, hats off to Nick Offerman, dude.
Yes,
it was. It hit the spot.
I didn't think he had it in him. I didn't think he had it in him. And I was like amazed. I think I was more amazed at his piano playing and how he like made us feel uncomfortable and comfortable at the same time. Mm-hmm. Like you're like, I'm uncomfortable because I feel like you're about to get killed, buddy. Mm-hmm. I think you're about to get a hammer in the back of the head. But all of a sudden, like, he starts playing the piano, nothing bad happens, and everyone just gets to be set at ease. And I give praise to Bill Offerman. I mean, not Bill Offerman, Nick Offerman, for doing that.
Yeah, it's just an interesting set of events, because you have this guy that is fully prepared. He built this whole, you know, arsenal, like this whole, you know, how he wired the whole town, man. Like he put a fence, like he's on point. He's like super prepared, you know, like he's probably fought Fedra before, because he has the you know, the thermometer thing, the testing thing, you know, and all this. And man, like you fell quick, bro, because, you know, all it took is a kiss and you're thinking, oh my god, no, dude, you're gonna get murdered, like all that with this. But luckily, right, like it was legit, it was true.
Well, look how they painted that scene. They painted that scene where, like, you know, well, let me say how they built up that scene. We look at Bill as someone that is already, from our point of view, we're like, oh, he's got everything down pat. He knows what he's doing. And then comes Frank and adds the nuances to his life that he forgot about. Mm-hmm. Like whether it be fixing up their little town, whether it be redoing the boutique so they can have clothes all the time, almost to like where he's trying to make him have a normal life in this abnormal world.
Yeah. That's pretty. It's pretty deep. And then, you know, following that, and just before that, the bed scene, right? Because I was just gonna say, even through that, right, like that, the acting is perfect, because he's like a little kid, like he's never done this before, right? And Frank even asks him, like, hey, like, first of all, I'm not a whore, right? But if I do this, if I do this, right, like I have to stay. And he's like, okay, like, you know, he's in, bro, he's in. And you know,
I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect Bill to be a virgin. And he comes off as someone that's never been with another man, never been with anyone. I mean, the way they portrayed him in that love scene is the fact that he was stiff as a board, and Frank had to put him at ease. Yeah. And you know what's nice about the whole situation is the fact that in the video game that I wanted to harp on, we never meet Frank. Right. All we kept hearing is from Bill saying, Frank, my partner. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that these writers took that original script from Naughty Dog that, oh, he says he's his partner, and immediately go, I think we can build a relationship here. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there might be people skeptical about why make it a gay scene, or why not is it a straight scene. I don't think it's us to judge. I think the fact that they took a little portion from the game where he mentions Frank as a partner and created this beautiful backstory for them.
Absolutely.
And you know, my biggest take at first, like, I didn't know if I wanted to change the characters around that much, but this change really surprised me for the better.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and I think one of the game writers did mention that that was kind of like the intention, that when they say partner, right, and like why would your partner just be so mad at you, right, like in the game, because they show that Frank is like super mad at Bill, and obviously they had a very different relationship, but it's a very good point, man, because and it speaks to the times as well, and I know that the game just came out in 2013, but I do have to mention that when I played it, it never crossed my mind. It never even for a little bit crossed my mind that Bill and Frank were gay. Like right. You just play through that or whatever, right? And then jump 10 years forward, and then we have this show, and it just fucking hits you, right? And I think that's one of the things that makes it wonderful, because you can also kind of almost see growth within yourself, right? We're talking about this, and to the point where we can appreciate this show for what it is, right?
Yeah, I think one of my takes is this: I think we talked about this a little bit yesterday. I don't like when people make changes to stories, especially people's backgrounds and stories, to a dramatic change just to fit what's popular at the time. Like if, let's say Frank, or let's say Bill is a straight person in the game, and you forced him to be gay on the show, I don't like that.
Yeah.
But same goes if Ellie is a lesbian character in the video game, and then you force her to be gay on the show, that's stupid. You keep the story as original as possible, and don't make major changes like that. Needless to say, I don't think this was a major change. I think this was just their adaptation to what they read in the script for the game. Exactly. And I like that.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm not opposed to change, as long as they make it work for the show and for us, right? Because I think at the end of the day, that's what we want to see, right? That them keeping some type of consistency as well, and like what we were mentioning before, some of these changes they have made it work, right? But just to kind of move it along, we after the kiss and the sex scene, well, not sex scene, but it's implied, we jump another 3 years and we're in 2010, right? And what's the first scene? Them walking outside bickering, right? Like I think Frank is mad because he wants like to decorate some of the stuff, and then
he wants some paint. Oh yeah, the first argument is I just want some paint. I want to redo certain areas. I want to go fix up the boutique. I'm going to go fix up this building. He's going around trying to recreate building. He's very handy himself, so he doesn't need Bill to sit there and do everything with him. He does his own little projects. Bill does his own little projects. All he's asking from Bill is, let's go into town, let's go to Home Depot and grab some fucking paint.
Right, like let me do I think he said the boutique was the last one, but I can't remember what other places he wanted to decorate or whatever. Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Because even though it's been, I think by now like 7 years, right, 4 and 3, they're a married couple, bro. I mean, if you think about that, right? Like it's just bickering about the stupidest thing, right?
Isn't that the law? But after 10 years living with someone, you're automatically married.
Exactly. and it's like a different type of love, right? Like it's just like the man, like because Bill doesn't get it, like like why? Like why do you want to do this, right? Because that's what I like, motherfucker.
Here's what it is. It's your typical married life after almost hitting 10 years together.
Exactly.
So that's what a normal conversation sounds like in a married life.
Yes, and what I like about this jump of 3 years is that with that bickering or whatever comes out, well, Bill gives in and he's like, okay, fuck it, we'll do it. But then Frank is like, and we're gonna have friends, and this is where we're gonna have friends, and Bill's just like, what do you mean friends?
Like he's literally decorating so they can attract people.
Right.
where Bill's whole plot was, I want to keep everyone out of here.
Right, like let's murder everybody. But it worked out because this is where we find out that this is how we meet Joel and Tess, right? And dude, what a scene, because it's been 7 years since the end of the world or whatever, and they seem to be calm and collected, clean, having a good time, except for Bill, who's pointing a gun at Joel the whole time. But
honestly, I know what I liked about. I like that they put them opposed to each other, because they're literally looking into the mirror.
yes.
When Bill looks at Joel and Joel looks at Bill, they're literally looking at each other's reflection, because they have the same mindset to everything.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's one of those moments where like Joel calls him out on the fence weakness, right? And because Bill was like, no offense, but like, fuck you, I don't want to see you.
We have
right?
everything.
Like we have
He's
everything.
like, we don't need nothing from you. We don't need to. We have nothing to trade with us.
Right.
And then he points out, well, I don't think so, buddy. That fence is about to fall in a couple years.
Yeah, and not only that, but you can tell in Bill's reaction, right? And this is why this actor is fucking amazing. And his reaction is like, God damn it, he's right. and while that doesn't demonstrate trust or anything like that, it has to, right? Like at least a little bit, where you're like, oh man, like this guy's good, right? Like this guy's good.
Let's say he doesn't trust him right away, but once he said, get that fucking gun out of my face, after he explained what they can do for each other, is when he respected Joel, at least. Maybe he didn't trust him completely, but he did, like, all right, it makes sense.
And I think there was a line right there where Joel tells him, and I'm paraphrasing here, but something to the effect of like, that offense will last you a lifetime, and you can kind of save your life, or it'll save your life. And then he's like, lives, meaning Frank too, right? And I think that's where it clicked for Bill, where it's like, oh shit, like he gets it. We're protectors. We're protectors, and we're protecting these people that we have, right? Opening up a little bit, right, to Joel.
I think that's where you get like, and I'm sorry that I'm jumping a little bit. That's where you also get Bill saying, before you got here, Frank, I was never scared. I love that line.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like how I think that's how every man thinks.
Yeah.
When he's given something that he loves and he wants to protect at any cost.
Exactly.
Like before that, we're not afraid. If we get hurt, that's fine. We get hurt, but we're more afraid of we worry more about our loved ones or who we care about the most.
So true, man. Because it's like, after not only married, but you have kids and things like that. And on the regular world, imagine if it's the end of the world and you're afraid the whole time. Like, yeah, you want to protect your people.
I don't know how I would fucking sleep. Let's be honest. I wouldn't sleep.
You can't. But before we do the next time jump, a quick little important part here is that Frank tells Tess his idea about the music, right? About the decades. And this is how we know. I'm like, oh, yeah. And I think a little correction there. And I want to get your thoughts on this, too, because on the prior podcast, or I think the first episode, we talked about, remember the guy on the radio? And I thought he was the one that was playing the music. But it turns out that it was Bill, right? Bill and Frank.
Correct.
So but here's my question to you. Like, do you think there's some type of a network where like different people play different songs, or do you think it was only Bill and Frank playing the songs to Joel and Tess all along? Like, it's just those two connected, or do you think there's like a web?
I think it's just those four that are connected, and I think Joel, like how he showed paying off the radio guy in episode 1 with cigarettes or whatever, he pays him off. Like, listen, if this comes through, like if you hear a song from this decade, or this decade, broadcast it. I need you to broadcast it to everyone, because you saw, like, when you got to Joel and Tessa's apartment, they had a little mini radio out there on the table.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming they're not the only ones with a radio, since you have a radio operator controlling all those wires.
Right.
So I think they paid this man a certain amount of whatever credits, or God knows what they get their hands on, to pass the frequency on to them.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense, because I was convinced that it was that guy, and I think that you're right. That guy might be the middleman, but come to find out, the source really was Bill and Frank. So from there,
and then wait, don't jump yet, because we have that situation where, oh yeah, you're right. We should time jump. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
So time jump to 3 more years. So it's 2013, and the first introductory scene is them jogging. And obviously, it's very important because in this scene we see Frank out jogging, out running Bill. In fact, Bill, it looks like he's gonna have a heart attack, right? Like he looks like me after eating a couple of chicken wings. He's that tired, but it all culminates in the strawberries, right? Like the surprise that Frank had for Bill. So let's talk through that scene, because that was a very good scene.
I think that was the corniest laugh I ever heard out of Nick Offerman when he eats the straw. I was like, what kind of noise is that? Not once did I ever expect this man, Nick Offerman, or even this character Bill that I've known from video games, ever eat a strawberry and make such a giddy, squealing laughter noise that I was just like, what just happened?
Yeah.
I was so taken back by it that I thought, I thought that was a sound from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I thought it was like somebody else was in there. I'm like, what the hell's going on?
It was pretty uncharacteristic of our typical Ron Swanson, right? But it hit me in the way that I was like, when people say like I was giggling like a little girl, that's exactly like what it took me to, because it was just like this moment of like, shit, like this is we're living in a shit world, like we're watching our backs the whole time. We can get murdered or be a freaking mushroom at any point in time, and then just this little thing, right? That it just kind of reminds you of the real world. Like, oh my God, like I'm doing all this sacrifice for years for this moment too, right? So that's why I saw it as.
Isn't this the same scene where he tells him that he traded the gun for these seats?
Yes. Which also signifies to me that like Frank is not a killer, right? Like that's Bill's job, right? That the defender, he's like, yeah, I traded the gun for seeds. Like he's that grower. He's like the family man. That's his focus.
I look at it as, if someone, like, mind you, we're never gonna know the answer to this, but if someone told me Frank in his past life was a day trader or someone that sells things, he has a mindset of a salesman, like a door-to-door salesman. He saw the gun as a product. He didn't see it as a weapon or something that protects him. Whereas for Bill, it's like, this is our force field. You're taking away our force field. This is this is our life. Bill's immediate reaction is like, you just killed us. Whereas Frank's reaction is like, I just made our life better. Yeah. I traded this stupid thing for this. Yeah. All of this.
Yeah, but exactly. And I think it was a super funny remark. It was like, it was a little one. It was a little gun. Like, don't worry about it. But it was like a quick, subtle moment, but it didn't take away from, that feeling, that pure feeling that, Bill had after biting the strawberry. And that, I think that's exactly when, I think you brought it up before, where he says something about like you're the reason for this, right? Like, I forgot, again, I forgot the quote, but like, I didn't have a reason to live, but now, right? Like you're it. So very powerful. From there, I think
I like how they moved from such a happy moment to the next, almost like it felt like the next day when they woke up, where actually Frank wakes up to Bill's not in the bed. He's hearing things go off. All their booby traps are going off. He's frantically looking for Bill. He's going downstairs, goes to their little armoire or bookshelf, whatever you want to call that, or maybe even a desk, and takes out his gun looking for Bill. finds him outside just shooting raiders. They weren't infected people. They were actually raiders that Joel literally warned him about, that it's not the infected you should worry about, it's these raiders.
Yeah.
And come to fruition, everything that Joel warned him about, and that's where you get that scene of, Bill getting shot. And man, I thought the worst at that point.
Yeah, and that was such an epic scene because they do give us this little action scene, right? And like these flamethrowers are going off. Like he's booby trapped the shit out of this place, which he did in the game, right? Except he did it at a broader spectrum. When they go out into school, he has everything booby trapped. That's why he goes, because he knows where all the traps are. But I'm glad that they showed us a little bit of his ingenuity with that, right? Because he was blowing them left and right, and I'm gonna assume that he actually got his aluminum fence from Joel, because they weren't penetrating that shit. And even he gets shot, and I'm thinking like, oh my god, like they can't kill him right here, like what the fuck? Because they take him right away, and then he starts telling Frank like, I made a list, and he starts talking about the keys. But the most important thing is like, call Joel, right? Like he's worried now. Yeah. And now I was like, oh, now you trust Joel, right? Like call Joel, because he needs to protect you, because he's thinking he's going to die.
Right. So he thinks he's going to die, and he's like worried about Frank not being alone.
Right.
And then, it takes us literally to our last time jump.
Yeah.
To, I guess, 2023. But let me ask you this. In between the time jump, do you think Bill survived because of what Frank did? Or is Bill surviving because Frank called Joel and Tess to come help him? Because, to be honest, I don't know anything. We don't know anything about Frank's background. But we do know Joel was in the military. So he might have how to help with bullet wounds. Mm-hmm. So who do you think helped him out there?
So it's a good question, and I think so. Even though I'd like to think, just like how they brought Tess back for this episode, because I thought no more Tess, right? And I was pretty pleasantly surprised that they brought the actress back for this flashback. It's very possible, right, that we have that flashback of Frank and Bill, and Joel and Tess showing up to help them. But I'd like to think that, because I want to get a little bit more of Frank and Bill. However, I also think that they wanted to show us that Frank is that dude. He's the healer, right? Because if you think about it right away, he knows where to lay him down, and he starts working right away. It's not like he's panicking like, oh, what should I do? He starts working, man. He starts digging in there in that wound, trying to take that bullet out. So it makes me think, we don't know his background, but gives me the impression that what they were trying to convey is he is that dude. One is the protector, and one of them's the healer or the nurturer, or whatever, right? And I keep going back to that because they show it to us over and over, right? For their type of personalities, but that's what I think. I don't know. I like your theory better now, because I'd like to see them back. But it is possible. It is possible.
I just look at it this way. He was freaking out. He literally tells him, call Joel.
Yeah.
So I think as he's trying to help him with the wound, at some point, I still think he calls Joel, because when you're freaking out, you need someone to help you.
Right.
And I just think that Joel and Tess came out. Now, how soon they got there and how bad was the wound?
Right.
I'm not sure.
Like, play some 80s music and get your ass over here. But yeah, and just to be clear, I think when he's saying call Joel is because he thinks he's dying. Like he thinks he's gonna die, and he needs Frank to be taken care of, right? And the only person that he knows that would probably fit those shoes is Joel. Right. So that scene ends.
I want to ask you a question. Yeah. How did Frank and Tess start communicating? Because they don't have a radio, like a CB radio, at their house. So how did she communicate with him?
You know,
what's your theory on that?
I mean, I can only assume that, you know, Tess and Joel are smugglers, right? And that somehow they go on runs, right? And somehow they had to come across this fort that Bill has built. And once Frank was already there, and, you know, Frank doesn't hold back, and maybe they started talking. I mean, that's the only assumption. I don't know if there's anything beyond that, like technicalities with radios and things like that. I just think that they were probably like looting, right? Like looking for stuff, and they came across, you know, Frank and Bill. Frank more than anything, right? However, going back to the flashbacks, it's possible that we'll see how that happened, right? At some point. What do you think? Do you think they'll bring them back? Nick Offerman? No. Do you think that's it? That one episode?
Only because we saw so much of their story. They have nothing else to bring us. Like, they don't have anything else to enrich the story with. You know, it's not like a scene where you got some wise wisdom coming from Bill's character to tell Joel about. So he already said everything. You know, he said it in a letter that we're going to talk about soon. So, you know, moving on to the latest jump that happens now, 2023, which literally takes place during the moments of the first episode, time frame wise. So we open the scene after the latest time jump where both Nick, both Bill and Frank are old men, probably close to 70s, maybe 80s. I'm not sure. But very old. Unfortunately, Frank has a debilitating condition where he can't really walk. It could be some sort of muscle situation, muscular dystrophy. It could be anything, and we're never told what it is. And Frank is in a wheelchair the whole time, where Bill has to literally do everything for him.
Yeah, so it's 10 years, and you know, and I think that's what I was saying, like how they showed in the prior jump where he's jogging and he's the healthy one, right? And it's crazy because at the end of that you know, where he gets shot or whatever, you think, man, like fucking Bill died, right? But then boom, no, the one that got sick, and it's unfortunate, right? Because shit happens, you get a bullet or whatever, but there's no coming back from whatever he had, right? Like, he was in the wheelchair. There's no medical treatment. There's no, you know, all you can do is prolong his life. And obviously he wasn't liking it. But one observation that I did want to point out is that, you know, the first shot is Frank in the wheelchair, and then the very next shot is Bill watering flowers, you know, which means that this dude changed, right? You know, like, he wouldn't have been.
They literally changed their roles.
Right? Yeah, that, like, now he's the carer, right? And he has something to live for because he's caring for this guy. But talk through us through what comes up next, right? Because it seems like Frank is kind of getting tired of this.
Well, I mean, you can see the struggles throughout the whole day for Frank. He can't. I mean, literally, he can't even wipe his own ass, probably. He can't do anything for himself. He can't even. The one thing he loves doing is painting. He can't paint. As you can see him trying to paint Bill's self-portrait from a picture on the wall. You can tell where he started to where he's trying to finish, and how badly things probably shifted for the worse in a short amount of time. So at that point, you kind of see, like anyone, you're contemplating life. You start thinking, I've lived a good life. I'm content with what I did. And he decides, you know what, this is going to be my last day alive.
Yeah. He surprised him, right? Because he surprises him because he's like on the wheelchair the very next day, and he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, just let me be up, because today's my last day, he says, right? And right away we see Bill like breaking down, like he starts crying, and he's like, I can't do this, right? And Frank it kind of enforces the idea of like dude, like I need this, right? Like it's Like this is the end for me. And I think while Bill is struggling with the idea, I believe Knight wrote the quote down, excuse me, where he said something like, I've had more good days with you than with anybody else. Give me one last good day. And I think that's when Bill's like, okay, okay, let's do that, right?
And then Frank pretty much gives him the layout of the plan. Yeah. I'm going to have this amazing day. We're going to go shopping. We're going to get new outfits. We're going to get everything done. And at the end of the day, we're going to have a great meal. And then you're going to take all these pills, crush them, and put them in my drink. And then you're going to take me to bed, put me down to sleep, and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, Bill said, fuck that noise. If you're going, I'm going.
Yeah.
And mind you, he never tells Frank of the change in the plan. He literally takes all those pills and puts them in the bottle.
Yeah.
And kind of plays out the few remaining pills that he has, puts it in the glass, mix it up, then pours the wine, goes, here you go. And then he goes, you think, and the best is like, you think this is enough? You think it's gonna do it? He goes, the amount of pills that are in this bottle will take down a horse.
Right. Right. And then he's like, hey, what are all those pills at the end of the bottle? And he's like, that's when he gives him the surprise, right? Like,
yeah.
Which is a pretty, I think that's the ultimate gift, probably, right? Like in regards to what he says, he's like, I would, in any other circumstance, I will be really upset. But given the circumstances, is like, almost like I'm going to give you a pass. But it's truly the greatest gift only because, and I know we're talking about a very, like, unaliving yourself, right? It's a very sensitive subject, but.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing how he did it? Because you could look at it as he gave him the ultimate gift of sacrificing himself to go together. But you could also look at it as he just committed suicide and he's going to hell.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's 2 points of view on how to look at something. Like, to me, whatever he decided, that's cool. But like, for me to enrich, I think the character of Bill should have elongated to the end of the episode. Meaning, I don't think he should have killed himself then. I think you would have seen when Joel and Ellie showed up, Bill to still be alive. And you can see that he's a completely different Bill. He's the same Bill that we saw prior to meeting Frank. Closed in, guarded, doesn't trust anybody again. His life has changed back to where it first began. And I think in that, you could have seen him make one last ditch effort to save his humanity by either saving Ellie from the infected or Joel from the infected. Gotcha. And that's how he went. I would have liked to see that.
Gotcha. And here, let me rephrase as to why I think the way they did it worked, right? Because when I say gift, I probably don't mean just giving the gift of let's die together, but I think the gift more, or the message, right, that they were trying to tell is, I can't live without you. Like, I can't, not only dying with you, but even if I had the thought of like just letting you go, I can't. All I'm doing this all these past 20 years or whatever is for you. I can't do this alone, right? Like, I have to go. And then he mentions, he's old as well. Like, he's like, I've lived my life, so I think it worked for that purpose, right? And then also, and we'll transition into the letter, right? Because he does leave a letter for Joel and Ellie. And yeah, maybe I think your version, or how you would have liked that episode to end, would have been a little bit more dramatic, a little bit more action, maybe going out with honor, right? I agree, but I think that what they were trying to convey here is, man, this is a love story, and
they were giving us the Notebook ending.
Yeah, but
that's what they did.
But not only that, right? But like, I was the protector. Joel, he's the letter. Now you're the protector, right? Sort of thing in a poetic way. But yeah, so Ellie and Joel show up, right? And there's no one to be found. Ellie finds the letter, a key to the truck. And then
she finds the gun.
They find that they're dead, because of the suicide note. But let's walk through the note, because I thought that was pretty powerful as well, right? There's a part where like Ellie starts reading the note, and I have a little bit, here where like I think it was addressed to whomever, but probably Joel. Because he assumes that he's like the only one that knows the code or whatever. But then he's like, hey, which totally reminds me, dude, of Ron Swanson's laugh, right? Whenever the few times that we see him laugh, he's like, and he's something like, I never liked you, right? But I guess you're my friend, so here's all my shit.
Here are all the codes.
Here are all the codes.
How to get downstairs.
Keep everything. But the most important part, I thought, was that he said something about that's why you're here, or oh yeah, use them, keep all the guns and use them to keep Tess safe. And that signifies two things. He didn't know that Tess was dead, first of all. Obviously, how would he know? I think he probably died even before Tess did, but he didn't know.
Well, he did. No, we're saying that whole took place during episode 1. Tess is still alive in episode 1.
Tess still alive, yeah. So wait, so how did you come up with that conclusion about the timing?
Only because of I'm imagining this way, because Tess is in Bill's mind, Tess is still alive. Remember how he said, oh, the music comes on because it's on a timer. Mm-hmm. That same song plays at the end of episode 1 in Joel's apartment.
Oh shit. Oh my God, you're so right, dude. You're so right.
So like, I'm like, okay, they weren't able to reset the clock. 80s music comes on, gets to the town in Boston, or the QZ in Boston. That guy hears it, plays it on Joel's radio at home, and then that's how we get that cutscene at the end of episode 1.
Dude, you're so fucking right. I hadn't thought about that, because that's exactly when the song starts playing, right? Wow, yeah, because I'm like, how did this guy, because you mentioned it earlier, and I'm like, okay, like I just kind of let it go, but now I'm thinking like, yeah, how are you so convinced? But that definitely makes sense. So he thinks, Tess is still alive, and he's like, use him to keep Tess safe. But at that moment, I think that Joel understands, right, that it's not Tess now, right? That it's Ellie that he needs to be saved. And I think that we see it even in the next couple of scenes, that he's being more open, more talkative, and like let's go, right? But just another observation there too is that when we talk about protectors, right, and we talk about Bill being the protector or whatever, at least he was successful. I think Joel has a lot of doubt in him, because even though he's that dude, he's the guy that will beat somebody to death with his bare knuckles or whatever. If you think about it, he has failed at protecting twice, right? And I think he carries that with him, and this is the time, or the moment where he's like, you know what, fuck this, I'm not gonna mess this up, right? I'm gonna get this kid wherever he needs to go.
Well, I think prior to meeting Ellie, and and kind of while he's with Tess, Joel's lost a lot. He's lost his daughter. He can't find his brother. Losing Tess was like the straw that broke the camel's back. And then not until this letter kind of like brought him back. Okay, look, I can protect this girl. I still maybe have a chance to find my brother. Not all hope is lost. And like, this is what I wanted to get, a little bit I wanted to get into in the metamorphosis of both Bill and Joel. For their 20 years after the pandemic, their pandemic, they could have had the same exact life, but Bill got lucky and let love back into his life, and he had a great life. Whereas Joel stayed protected and guarded, said, I'm not going to feel anything for anybody else. Even with Tess, he kept it more like a business transaction. I don't think he ever loved her, but I think he liked her a whole lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
I think he did love her, man. I think he loved her.
I don't think so, because I don't think his life would have been that dark and gloomy. I think it would have mimicked Bill's life. If he let real love in and try to create something with Tess, his life wouldn't look this dreary. Like, it just looks like he looks like he has a cloud over his head the whole time. Whereas for Bill was that way, then this bright sunshine, the Frank came in and changed his life for the better.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, the whole theory of this show is love will conquer all. Bill is the little mini proof that that's true.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's only for a short period of time. It's not the overall goal we want, but he shows you that love can conquer all.
Yes, and in addition to that, and again, fucking praise to the writers, man, because if you think about it and the way they put this big ass middle of the episode, right, which is this story about Bill and Frank, that is just context, bro. It's just context for what Joel and Ellie are about to go through, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? One of the scenes is that when he realizes that on the letter about Tess, he walks out of the house. Like, he's just like, emotionally, he can't take it anymore. I feel like he's about to like break down or whatever. But again, great context. That whole story, perfect transition into, you know, whatever Joel and Ellie are about to embark. From there, we see that Ellie takes a gun, right?
It's funny that it's the same gun that Bill was pointing at Joel.
Yeah. No, is it? No, you know what? I think it was Frank's gun.
It is, but before it was Frank's gun, it's that same gun that Bill is pointing at Joel. Eventually, it becomes Frank's gun that he hides in the desk.
Now, do you think? I'm thinking it's pretty obvious that Ellie's going to do something stupid with that gun, because the whole show.
I think it's going to be opposite.
Oh, okay.
I think she's gonna save Joel's life with that gun.
Shit. Okay, man, you came on fire today, bro. Because I'm thinking, man, like the whole show, she's like fiending for a gun, man. Like, give me a gun now. And like every opportunity, he's like, even when he's putting the machine gun, like the whatever M16 or whatever, he's putting it away. He's like, well, I mean, if you're just gonna store it away, he's like, no, you know.
I like the scene in Bill's bunker where there's a wall of them.
He's like, there's a whole wall, and he just keeps saying no. Yeah, so that's interesting. So you think he's gonna save Joel, huh?
Yeah, I think that's where we're gonna. I think that's probably where episode four is gonna take us.
Okay.
I think, you know, what's nice about the ending of this episode is, like, you know, Joel finally gets his battery. Mind you, the battery is literally in pieces, where the sulfuric acid of the battery is in a jar.
That's nuts, right?
And he's got to put the battery together and then charge it. Yeah. I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing that you could do, first of all.
Hey, man, leave it to Bill and Joel. Yeah, because if you don't know how to do that, then you're shit out of luck. Then, you know, Joel comes back in. He's like, hey, the battery's charging. We're good to go. She tells Ellie, hey, I have a brother. Let's go find my brother. He used to be part of the Fireflies. He's probably going to know where to take you, right? And it's interesting in that part because he's like, hey, show me your scar, right? And just to make sure, Joel is still, you know, like hesitant, right? Like, he's like, let me see if that shit is healing. And then she kind of schools Ellie into saying, hey, like, you need to listen to what I say. You don't do anything. You don't show that scar to anybody because they'll fucking shoot you, right? And I just wanted to mention that because Ellie's a little rebellious, right? And that's why I'm thinking, man, like, she's gonna do something stupid with that gun, because at that point he's like, repeat what I said, and she still didn't do it, right? She said something like, whatever you say goes, but didn't repeat word for word what he said, meaning, man, this little girl is gonna be probably trouble in the next episode or so. I
think that, like you said earlier, their lives are kind of going to go through the same roller coaster ride that we just saw with Bill and Frank. Like you're gonna see them bicker about stupid shit. You'll see one worry more over the other, and then vice versa. Typically you'll see Joel worrying about Ellie, but then you're gonna see moments where Ellie's worried about Joel. So like I think what we saw in this episode will kind of be portrayed with Joel and Ellie going forward for the next 6 more episodes.
Nice. And to finalize the scene, I want to bring one that's pretty funny, where Ellie gets in the truck and she doesn't even know, like she's never been in one, and she's just like, holy shit. And it's interesting, right, to see the eyes, because it happened 3 times I think in this episode, when she sees the plane, right, and she's like, oh my god, like what did you ever get in one of those and whatever, because she's never gonna experience that, right? She did it with the Mortal Kombat arcade machine. She's like, oh my god, like this shit. And then the car, she didn't even know what a seatbelt was, right? And that's so mind-blowing to me that it's just like second nature to us, but they're showing, this character from that point of view that I don't know what the fuck that is, right? And I'm curious to see what's next, right? Like, what other discoveries is she gonna make throughout the shows that that we're gonna relate with, right? But at the end of the show, they drive away, and then we have another window scene from Bill and Frank's bedroom, right? As they leave. Any thoughts on that? I have a quick little Easter egg that I want to share, but any thoughts on that, except for the drama closure?
I think and I guess maybe I'm cynical or something. When I saw the window scene, I thought I was going to see a hand just go on the windowsill as it being an affected hand, and I was like, oh my god, they just dodged the bullet.
Oh shit.
And that's what I thought was going to happen. But it's very reminiscent of Last of Us Part 2. Yeah. Not the first game, the second game, because there is literally that same scene in the movie, but in a different house.
Yeah, and I think of every window of that start menu scene where you just see the window with the curtains flapping in the wind or whatever. So it just kind of made me think of that. But I did see a quick video where the writers of the show, or the creators of the show, are talking about, they throw a lot of ideas to kind of make this show work, and like what could work, what couldn't. And just a fun fact that they kind of had all these window scenes, right? Because what they wanted to do is, like, how when you start an episode and you can skip intro, if you want to skip the intro. So what they wanted to do is put like different window scenes to reflect like the menu, like the start menu of the game. And then, I get it. Yeah, and then instead of saying skip intro, it will just say start game or something like that. And they were like, oh man, that's a great idea, blah blah blah. But when they came down to it, they were like, oh yeah, that's not gonna work.
You know what, it just popped in my head. I guess the way you could look at, how we're always talking about at a certain point of every episode, you see a butterfly in pursuit of hope, like, where there's still hope out there. I think this is like kind of symbolic to the same thing. You know how they say when one door closes, a window opens up? Well, that bedroom door was locked. You couldn't get in, but the window was open, kind of like telling you that, you have this obstacle in the way, but don't worry, there's still a way out.
Yeah, I agree, because we see the butterflies going on the windows, and I think we'll see more of that, but very good point. So that's pretty much the end of the episode. I
do have a question for you.
Yeah.
This is not even an important question. Why didn't Joel and Ellie stay, let's say, a couple days? Rejuvenate. They've been through a lot. In the brief time, they've been through a lot. They've seen a lot of people die. They've been attacked numerous times already. They finally got their first hot shower. Why not stay the night? You're well protected.
Yeah, it's a very good scenario that you put on here, because I thought it was weird that they find out that Bill and Frank are dead, and then they decide to go take showers, right? You know, like there's dead people in the room, and they're like, okay, you have a whole town here,
huge.
right? Like you have a whole town here with running water, electricity, or whatever. Like go somewhere else, right? But
I don't think the whole town's got like warm water. I think his generator
only it made it
only for his house.
To me, it made it seem like that big ass generator was powering the whole town, like the whole subdivision, because they had the boutique, they had all that stuff. But
maybe
because it was a huge one, dude. It was like not like your regular home generator. But regardless of that, dude, I mean, if you think about, I just think Joel is in a hurry. He needs to go look about his brother, you know, and like he doesn't want to waste any more time.
But you know they got food in there. They know you can sleep on a very comfortable bed probably, or a couch, whatever, and you'll have peace of mind to know that you're very protected with these electrified fences.
Yeah,
I mean, spend one night.
Absolutely. No, I hands down, I agree with you. You have food, shelter, you know, electricity, water, like what else do you need, right? But I just think it's just Joel's sense of urgency, right? Because if you think about it, if it went for the brother, like what else is there to do, right? Like just go back to the QZ and just start the smuggling thing, which I don't think he can do anymore because he's been out past a few days. So they're gonna hang him if he comes back, right? So, but yeah, to your point, yeah, absolutely, hands down, stay a couple nights, make it a little weekend retreat of rest or whatever. But nah, I don't think Joel thinks that way, man. He needs to hurry up and give us episode 4 already.
Yeah, I guess. And like I saw the trailer for episode 4. I guess we get introduced to the raiders that were invading. Or trying to, I'm not sure if they're the same raiders, but there's raiders involved in episode 4.
Gotcha. Okay, and we saw a little bit of some raiders that were exterminated pretty quickly on this episode. And you know, I didn't see the preview, but I thought we were gonna get Henry and his brother, if you remember them, for next episode. But if we're getting raiders, I'll take raiders. Anyway, so with that said, any other closing thoughts? I think
this show is batting 1,000. There's nothing I would change from any of the 3 episodes we've watched so far, and I can't wait to see what's next.
Yeah, I heard that this 3rd episode increased its audience by 37%. So if whatever 10 million or whatever they were watching episode 1, it's you know almost doubled since then. So man, this show is getting a lot of traction, and so far it hasn't disappointed. There hasn't been an episode that we're like, okay, filler episode, you know, but but awesome. All right, well, Sci'D geeks and non-geeks, I guess, if you listen to the show, or
potential future geeks,
or you know, people like my wife that converted into this show. Hopefully, if you're new here, you know, leave us a comment. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know if you have any theories on the show, any conspiracies, or anything that you'd like to see, or that you want us to talk about. Please, leave a comment, share. Again, can't stress enough, share to someone that you think will like this show. You know, we want to definitely grow our audience. And J-Mo, it was a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Can't wait.
We'll talk to you guys next week.
Peace out.
Bye, everybody.